back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I'm here today to do the next one in the BookTube SFF Babble series, and today we're going to be talking about books that have LGBTQ+ themes in it, which is a great topic, something I'm definitely finding more of in fantasy and science fiction, something I'm very happy to be seeing more of, and something that I've kind of tried to recognise a bit more, because it isn't something I was aware of until the past year or so, I'd say. And now that I am, I find it a lot more exciting when a book has LGBTQ+ themes in it and does them well, which is the key part. So, today I'm going to show you some of the books that I've read either by LGBTQ+ authors or which have themes of LGBTQ+ in it, and hopefully you guys will go and pick up some of the books and try them out. So the first book, or I should say series, that I have to recommend to you guys is the Expanse series. This is by James S.A. Corey, which is actually 2 people, and this is the third one in the series. I would recommend the whole series, but this one in particular is the one I most recently read, and this one has lots of themes about gender and sexuality throughout. It's a world, or a solar system I suppose, which is very inclusive. There are so many different types of people, so many different types of race, religion, gender, everything you could imagine in this solar system, and it is very, very inclusive. Obviously there are fissures between different types of people. Mainly it's based on the planet they come from rather than who they identify as being or who they have sexual relations or romantic relations with. So I definitely would recommend this series as a whole for just the inclusivity that it has and the representation that it has. It's fantastic. It definitely deserves more praise, although I know a lot of people have read it because of the TV show that's come out and things like that, but I would still certainly recommend it, and I do fully intend to complete the series. I believe the most recent book just came out as well, and I think it's like the 9th or something, so I definitely need to catch up because this is only book 3. But that is my first recommendation for you guys. The next book on my list, or in fact the next author on my list, is Gail Carriger, because she writes a lot of great characters who are gay, but there's definitely some who are a bit queer, I would say. And I really, really enjoy the characters that she creates. Not only is the world utterly fluffy and fantastical and silly, it's also just filled with fun, filled with crazy airships and big adventures, werewolves and vampires, but not the tropey kind, definitely more of a funny, light-hearted kind. There is a very focal relationship between Biffy and another character who's also male, and that is a relationship that I was so fully invested in whilst I was reading this, and still am, and I loved it. I really like how she brings these characters to life and she makes them seem like they are real people, they have real emotions, real feelings, and yeah. She's just great, so I would 100% recommend her. She also recently did an erotica novella which is called Romancing the Inventor, and that has lesbian characters as the focus, so I'd certainly recommend that too. But yeah, anything by Gail Carriger, she's fantastic. The next one I have is by Joanna Russ, and this is The Female Man. It is one of her most famous books, and it's one that I read because of Elizabeth, and she said that I would probably enjoy this, which I definitely do. It's definitely a really, really feminist book. It deals a lot with gender, a lot with themes of women being able to deal with their lives without men, and there is in fact a planet where all of the women are the only ones on that planet. The men actually died out, and so they have to procreate with one another, and they have a whole society together. There is a society which is quite like Earth, so they have men and women, and then there's a society that has just the women. And seeing these two societies kind of come together and find out about each other was quite eye-opening for how some people are viewed by our society today. So I definitely would recommend this. It's definitely not a plot-driven book as much as it is an exploration of gender and sexuality. So if that sounds interesting to you, I would recommend this one. The next one on my list is one by one of my favourite authors. This is Ursula Le Guin, and it's The Left Hand of Darkness by her. In fact, most of her books have sort of gender fluid characters, but this one in particular is a world where the different alien races on this planet called Winter can actually shift genders between male and female. When it comes time for them to procreate, they actually have a kind of choice between which gender to go for. so they don't have to say one or the other, and then the rest of the time when they're not mating, they are gender neutral. They don't have a gender, they're genderless, and they can just live their lives as they want without judgment or any of the stuff that comes along with gender norms and gender stereotyping. So this world and this book is fantastic. I think Ursula Le Guin, the way she writes, is fantastic, and I would definitely recommend all of her books. I've only read a few of them, but everything I've read by her has been really eye-opening and beautifully written, and I do think she is a fantastic author. So for that alone I'd recommend her, but especially for the representation of gender that she has within her books. So this one in particular. The next one I have is one that I was so happy when I read it, and it is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This book made me really happy because it was the first book, and probably one of the only books I've ever read, that had an asexual character who blatantly identified as being asexual rather than it was just hinted at. It was very blatant, it was on the page, it was written, and I really appreciated seeing someone actually go to that point and say it as though it wasn't something extreme, it wasn't something crazy, it was just normal, it was who they were, and I liked the fact that it was just part of the story that was just normal, and that made sense in the realm of this story, and it should be that way in our world as well. But of course it's not. So this book existing, and this book being one that is so beloved by BookTube and readers generally, is something that I really am happy about, and I definitely plan on reading a lot more of Seanan McGuire's work in the future, because I think she does similar things in a lot of her works, and I've read the second one in this series. It comes out I believe in June, and I loved it, and again it's got a lot to do with gender, so I would certainly recommend her as an author. The next one I have is the start of a series. This is by Lynn Flewelling, and it's the first book in the Night Runner series. It's called Luck in the Shadows. This focuses on two main characters who are both bisexual, and they are called Serigil and Alec, and they are fantastic characters who are just so raw and emotional and beautiful. Alec is a young character who is rescued quite early in the book by Serigil, and they do develop into a relationship as the story goes on. However, it takes a very long time for that to happen, and it's a very loving, very caring relationship that kind of springs from friendship. It's a beautiful representation of any relationship, but it's also great to see a bisexual relationship on the page in fantasy. As I say, it's not something you see as often as I would like, so I was really happy to hear that about these books, and I definitely would say it's a beautiful representation. The next author on my list is Kameron Hurley, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. She's very vocal on Twitter, and she's also quite a prolific writer. She's written lots of different series right now, and I've read quite a few of them, but I've kind of started a lot of them and haven't continued yet. I do plan to. I read The Mirror Empire by her, which I had on my Kindle, and I loved the world building elements, and I do think there was some representation in that book of LGBTQ+ characters. But I think the main character in God's War, which is the first one in her Beldame Apocrypha, I never know how to say that, series, is definitely a more obviously identified LGBTQ+ character. She's quite a ruthless character. Most of Kameron Hurley's books are quite brutal and ruthless. It's very dramatic, it's very exciting to read about, and it's definitely something that I think is not for everyone because it's quite unique. All of her books have really unique worlds and really unique setups, but I think if you can get past the weird into the wonderful, then you'll definitely have a great experience reading her work. Equally, she also writes non-fiction, and she's quite well known for that. So The Geek Feminist Revolution is a collection of essays by her. Most of them were originally published on her blog, but there are a few new ones, and these are all feminist essays, all about gender, all about identity, all about feminism. They are pretty much everything, and I think these are well worth reading as well if you're interested in that. So again, one I'd certainly recommend. The final one I have to recommend to you guys is River of Teeth, which is by Sarah Gailey. This is one I really recently read and I absolutely loved, and the reason I loved it is because it's such an eclectic mix of characters. There is a kind of band of characters that you follow throughout this story. It's only a little novella, so it's very short, and each of the characters is very different from the normal straight white man that you see in a lot of fantasy. So we have characters who are a lot older than previous characters that I've read, or characters who are pregnant and still able to do things, not something you see very often. We also have one character who is never identified as either male or female or anywhere in between, they are just called they throughout the whole book, and that was a perfectly natural part of the story. It fitted really, really well, and I really enjoyed the fact that we had a character who just didn't have a binary gender. That was great. So this little novella, small as it is, actually encompassed a huge amount of different things and diversities that I hadn't seen a lot in most big epic fantasies, and when you think that this has such a short amount of pages compared to a giant tome, I don't really know why epic fantasy writers aren't always including these sorts of representations and diversities in their characters and in their books. I think they should. So I would certainly recommend this. This one comes out in May, so very, very soon, so keep your eyes open for this one. And I have one book that I'm very excited to get to, which is this one. It is Dreadnought by April Daniels, and I'm really excited to give this a try because I heard from Eleanor that it was a fantastic story, and also I've heard that this has a trans lesbian character as the main character, which is something I really have not seen much of, but I've heard not only that the representation is good, but also that the story is very solid. I believe it's about superheroes in some way. I don't really know an awful lot more about it than that, but I know Eleanor has talked about it in one of her wrap-ups. But that, my friends, is everything, so do let me know in the comments below if you have any recommendations for LGBTQ+ authors or books that have themes of that in it. Do let me know. I'd love to have your recommendations, especially for science fiction and fantasy. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.